Hey, my name is Kelly Kessler. I'm the host of the podcast Rewiring Health, and I'm obsessed with helping you stop feeling burnout, living in pain, and anxious about the future. You see, for years, I felt like I was never good enough. I repeated in my head, when I accomplish this, then I'll finally be happy. And even when I accomplished it, there was always emptiness in my heart. I always put others' needs before my own. Negative thoughts ran wild in my head, and I always struggled to truly feel like I could relax and be present. Well, through my journey of healing, rewiring my brain, regulating my nervous system, and reprogramming my subconscious mind, I have recovered from an eating disorder, I have healed from chronic back pain, and I can truly be present with my 2 boys and feel that I am living the life I was destined to live with purpose and with joy. And I'm here to guide you along the same journey of healing. Showing up with confidence and living our life out with passion and purpose is so important, but yet so many of us struggle to do that. And what I loved about this conversation with Kate is that she brings such a unique perspective on how we can harness our inner worthiness and move past setbacks in life to continue on and continue our journey forward. So a little bit about Kate. Kate Chrerichello is a New York City-based performer, host, and certified fitness professional. She is the creator and host of the weekly podcast, Be the Good with Kate, where guests share their journey to finding their passion and helping others along the way. Throughout the pandemic, Kate sought to remind herself and others that there is still so much good in the world. She is continuously inspired by guests across the globe, including a Broadway music director, nonprofit founders, and those healing from loss while helping others. As a performer, Kate has toured with USO Show Troupe, Jersey Boys, and Broadway Tonite, and performs in numerous productions across the country. She has appeared in commercials, television shows, and films. By incorporating manageable and impactful changes each day, Kate inspires others to live their healthiest lives. She trains and coaches in person and virtually and brings health and wellness expertise to business and corporate settings. All right, welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. Very excited to be joined by Kate today. We had connected about a month and a half ago on Kate's podcast, so Be the Good with Kate. So definitely check out her podcast. But I'm so happy to have you here today and that we could reconnect. So thank you for being here.
Oh, Kelly, thanks so much. And I'm so excited to share your episode from Be the Good with Kate with everyone as well. So we'll see how timing works out if they are released right by each other too.
Love it. Yes, it's awesome. And it's so grateful to have this platform to connect with people. So it's amazing. So very happy you're here. And now I'm happy to hear your perspective and your story and your journey. So, and
thank you.
We'll jump right into it because I would love to hear what brought you to where you are today. What do you do today? And just fill in the audience of what your journey has been to get to where you are today.
Great. So I'm a performer, host, and certified fitness professional here in New York City. And it's a lot of hats, but I have found that I've been grateful to get to follow my passions throughout. And I think there are a lot of other paths that may have been, I don't even want to use the word easier, but more just that steady kind of A plus B equals C, a little bit more of that. But for some reason, I've always just been pulled to performing. I love stage and screen work. I love making an audience feel those emotions. I love connecting with people. And I've just always had such a comfort talking on camera and on stage. And so it's always been a passion since I was a child. I was very shy, which people don't always realize, to start that way. And then when I did start theater, it really brought me out of my shell. And it's such an amazing way. I mean, I could just go on and on just about the benefits of, being in like an acting class or a theater environment for children, but just to keep it shorter rather, that really spawned this passion for all of it. And then once I moved to New York after college, I had become a fitness instructor because, quite frankly, during high school, I thought, oh, well, when you move to New York as an actor, you have to be a waiter too, because that's all I knew back then. And this is pre-YouTube and Instagram and pretty much Google in general. So I was like, okay, I'll be a waiter in high school. And then I realized, oh, there's other things I could be doing besides that to supplement being a performer, and finding the fitness world was really a nice tie-in. And being a performer or also a dancer, fitness industry really does just work into that. And I got paid to show up to be fit and to motivate people. And it really is very similar to showing up to be in a performance as you teach or train. And I love interacting with people. And so I found that as well. And always so grateful that that's been another passion. It never was like a side job or that thing I did because I wasn't performing at the time. It was always another love. So to this day, I've been able to do both of those sides of my world, the fitness world and the performing world. And finding the host side of performing, that's kind of led me into Be the Good with Kate. And that's the podcast and weekly show on YouTube that started during the height of the pandemic as a way to just remind us that despite all the negative that's happening, there are people fighting for good every day, like Kelly here, who I was glad to feature. And it's been amazing. I've talked to people from all over the world. And just every time I talk to another person, no matter their industry, no matter their background, it's this reminder of, oh my gosh, there are so many ways to make a difference by following our passions. So it gives me such a boost as well.
Yeah, I love it. And I just love the concept of your show because we need more of that. Like, I think we can easily get into a rut where we think the world is coming apart and
Oh,
our lives are coming apart. And I remember like years ago, I'd be like, why can't we just have like a news program that showcases the good things? So it's like your show is literally that. Like, let's represent that and show that. And I just love the concept of that and that you're doing that and serving people in that way. So I absolutely love that.
oh, thanks. And I
Yeah.
just was so grateful to get to share these stories because there are so many amazing people and just unique things that you would never think of, or jobs that don't scream, oh, I'm making the world a better place through this job,
Yeah.
that people have found ways to absolutely do that. And oh yeah, I could go on and on. I mean,
Oh, I'm
it's
sure.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely love that. And another thing, I love that how you've complemented both of your passions or many of your passions with each other and how they've fed on each other. And I think it's so interesting how you can go one path and you don't realize how much it's going to complement your true passion.
Yeah,
And so you get into it and that you've continued both of those. So I think that's just absolutely amazing. And
thanks.
yeah, going off of that, with working in the fitness industry and working in the performance industry, I'm sure there's always that pressure to look a certain way and do certain things and just the overall pressure. Do you mind speaking on that and the pressure to be aesthetically pleasing, but yet your passion is this fitness passion, and how does that meet each other?
Oh, absolutely. And I will say, I think things have gotten a bit better in the past, even just 5 years with that. You know, there is much more of an embracing of people of all sizes and shapes. And we see it on TV and film so much more than we did before. I mean, even on Broadway, 1776 I saw a couple months ago, and one of the leads was 8 months pregnant in the show. So just seeing all of this is great, but we still have such a ways to go. And we are staring at ourselves in the mirror constantly when we're in dance class or singing or in fitness. You're in a fitness studio, there's a mirror there. So even when we try to be, kind to ourselves and really accepting of wherever we are, it's like you're staring at yourself all the time. And I think that alone is already can already really be grating on a person. But then when you start to see everyone around you, and to go more the performing specific, in musical theater, especially in the pre-pandemic times, you're surrounded in this room with 100 other females who all look like you-ish. And there's always going to be someone who is thinner or prettier or this or that, or and whatnot. And you know nothing about these people's talents by being just in a holding room waiting for the audition with them. But it's really easy to start to get in your head about it all and start to be like, oh, well, I should look more this way. And it's, I can preach to all of my clients, you don't need to worry about that, but that doesn't mean that I don't feel the same, for sure.
Yeah.
And it is just, amazing. And again, there with social media, there's some positive change of showing more of what's real, but then there's also the flip side of that, of people feel like everything on Instagram, so to speak, is the way they need to look or should look, and fill in all those blanks there. So there is a constant pressure with that. And in the fitness industry, it's not, I don't feel like necessarily it's so much just the weight as we kind of default to maybe more on the on stage and on camera side. But there's very much that like the tone, the muscles, the, what are we eating? The, do you seem to be someone who's eating only clean, or like, there is a lot of that. And it is so easy, even if the people around us aren't directly feeding that information to us, just like how we as each of ourselves in these worlds process and what we're reading, what we're seeing. And the negative self-talk is really easy to let just, run amok in our brains.
Yeah. Oh, I could totally see that, especially in both of those realms, because they're both realms in which, as he described, there's that self-criticism and there's probably the criticism of others that you may hear, or there's that, and what you said, the comparison, like how do I match up to these people, especially when you're going through an audition where your whole goal there is to be the best. And that's just like a natural arena for all this to collide and come to a head. And at the same time, you have to be at your peak performance, top game. So how do you do that? How do you come into that environment over and over and over again and show up with confidence in yourself? How did you obtain that and create that in your life?
Each person will have a different variation on the story, but I know for me personally, I have always been a very optimistic person, and I'm so grateful for that. But that doesn't mean that I don't feel fully that, oh, I mean, I remember being worried about wearing a ballet leotard in like seventh grade because my thighs were big. And I don't know where that came from. I didn't have parents who were saying, oh, your thigh, or anything like that, any of those more direct stories, or I didn't have kids saying, oh, you're, this or that. But for some reason, like I internalized that still like from then. And I wanted, one of those ballet skirts so that you couldn't see exactly the top of the thighs. And I remember that. And again, I don't know where it started. And most people I feel like have that story of like, this is why. I don't know. And maybe it was just because what I was seeing on TV or who I was seeing in shows, and they all had these, very slim figures and whatnot. And it's, that self-talk, it's a matter of reprogramming it and reminding like, look at what my body can do. Look how amazing I did today in class. And just not being afraid to celebrate those moments. If someone takes a dance class and they nail a step that they hadn't been able to do before, it might seem so small in the grand scheme of things, but that is something we've got to celebrate, because I mean, there's so many studies to back that up, of all those little, quote unquote, I say, because I don't think anything's little with like how we talk to ourselves, but all of those pieces build up into our whole, mental health aspect of things here. So by reminding ourselves and just like what we have achieved in the past, what we're achieving in this moment, or what our goal is, and to stay on task, it's a constant reminder. What's that? There's a quote, and who I'm sure someone listening will be like, oh, I know who said that, but it's that motivation is like taking a shower. It doesn't last, so you have to do it daily. Something like
Yes.
that. If you know
Yeah.
that quote. And
Yep.
it is that of just reminding yourself, like, yeah, there's going to be people who look maybe prettier or more that classic model look than you, but you don't know what their talent is. You don't know what their life is like. Like maybe they are struggling so much and you've got it, you've got all these things lined up for you. And so that is just one small piece of the puzzle, is the exterior, the physical appearance, and that there's so much more important things underneath. And once you start to break down, like, skinny doesn't mean healthy, super jacked, so to speak, doesn't necessarily mean healthy. I mean, there's a full picture, and we never see the full picture just when we're, in the presence of someone.
Yes, I love that. And there's, like you said, there's so many depths to that, and that what we can see on the surface, we're not understanding the full picture. It's like when somebody's really successful in business, you're like, oh, how'd you get so lucky? And it's like, you didn't see the years of work behind that and all the failures behind that and the sleepless nights. You don't see that. All you see is that, quote, perfect image in front of you, but there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes. So I love that you talk about that, because I think it's so important, again, to be reminded of that in whatever realm the audience is listening to, whoever's listening to this podcast. It is so important to be reminded of that you are worthy, and you don't know what everyone else is going through, and everybody has struggles, and everyone struggles with this. And to be so conscious and aware of your subconscious messages and choose the story that serves you is absolutely crucial. And I love how you talk about it like it's a shower. I actually haven't heard of that.
No.
But I love that because it is so true. There's never going to be a moment where you're like, well, I did my work, I'm good,
Yeah.
like that is not reality. This is something you will live with the rest of your life because you're never going to feel like you are just free of it. It's always going to
Right.
be there. So I love that you
Right.
highlight that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'd go like, just to add one more element to it, then there's also that there is an addictiveness of when people start to compliment you on something exterior. Maybe I'm going too much on a tangent, but like I remember I was not heavy, but I lost weight in college, and people noticed and they would comment and say, "Oh wow, you look so great," or like, "Wow, what are you doing?" And that is easy to start to be like, "Oh well, if
Yeah.
that's good, I should do more. I should do more." And so it's like, again, I'm saying like keeping the motivation, but I still fall into the trap of it too. Of like, oh, but does that say anything about my talent? No. Did I book more jobs because I lost a couple pounds during college? Absolutely not. And so that, again, just like we constantly need to remind ourselves of like, okay, what is the big picture importance? Like, are we healthy physically? Are we healthy mentally? Are we healthy emotionally? The whole thing.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's such a good point to make because so many of us look externally for that validation, for that sense of worthiness, that if we see the numbers on our Instagram likes, get the number
Oh,
of likes, and, we look for this constantly in our environment to say that you're on the right path, you're doing what you need to. But yet, if we just look within and realize that we were worthy without those compliments, or we were worthy without the numbers or whatever it is, that is the most profound thing, because we can take that and we have control over that. We don't have control over what people say to us or the numbers on social media or what we see. And it's such a important point to make, because we're human at the same time. So when you do get a compliment, there is that part of you that still feels that. And as much as you know that you need to be whole within, it still plays a role. And it's like those checkpoints of like, okay, thank you for the compliment. Where am I at today, even without that? And it's so important to do that. And it is a work in progress. No matter how much work you put into yourself, you're always going to have those trials in life that says, okay, well, where are you today? Because I just gave you this task where you had to figure out where you were, because you're getting these external messages, but where were you internally before them? So it's so
100%.
important. I love that. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's so important to hear that. It's a good reminder for all of us. No matter how much work you do on yourself, you have to be reminded of that over and over and over again. Yeah. So going off of that, a big thing as far as working on yourself and subconscious messages that serve you and putting yourself in a place where you are whole, what does your self-care routine look like? Because I always love to hear that. And it's so individualized. So I'd love to hear what your daily routine looks like.
I think that one of the major, well, let's say two of the major aspects of that to me would be it's like such a cliche phrase, but attitude of gratitude, right? But it's like real when you come
Yes.
down to it, and it's catchy, so it's easy to remember. But just being grateful.
Yeah.
I heard, shoot, was it Oprah or was it someone she was interviewing? One of the 10,000 podcasts I've listened to the last couple of years, one or the other. And she said, I wake up every day and the first thing I say is thank you. Like, just like as I wake up, and I was like, I love that. Like, what a great way to start. Because how many of us wake up and the first thing we think of is, shoot, I don't want to be awake yet, or whatever it is, or like, oh, wait, I have to be ready to go in 20 minutes, whatever that is. But to instead be like, thank you for the fact that it's sunny today. Thank you for the fact that my legs work to get me from point A to point B. Like, that is just so wonderful. So just being grateful and taking the time, I live in New York City, so there's lots of walking, there's lots of time in between or like, someone who's driving to and from places, you have that time to just reset and take a moment. And I try to really consciously take those moments to be like, okay, things feel crazy, but like, what's the good right now? And again, I'm not saying that we don't focus on what's not going well and all of that. Like, we need that time, but I have a tendency to focus too much on that time if I'm not careful, right? Of just like over analyzing everything. So it's really good to take the time instead to be like, okay, yeah, but what went well with that? Like, what went really well in that audition that you feel a little like shaky about as I left. Let's figure out why I feel shaky about it, and let's hone in on some of the positives, So that's one element. And the other element is sleep. And I say that as I know that I'm going to give birth 4 months from now and sleep is going to be out the window. But until, as you know, Kelly, but until then,
Okay.
that that is something I think I spent my entire 20s being sleep deprived, which I kept going. I was on the train, kept going. I felt the proverbial fine, felt
Yeah.
fine. But then I got to a point where I was able to not have to get up at the hour I was getting up and teach these like first thing in the morning classes, but on the performing side be out till 11 at night. So it was when you're trying to do early morning and late at night and then not nap in between, like it just does not, it's not long lasting. So then once I finally got to a point where I could take a couple of those things out and was able to get more of a solid night's sleep each night, go to bed a little earlier, wake up a little later, that has been a big game changer for me too. And then, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I still have energy as opposed to that crash that used to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how you bring up sleep as self-care, because I think
Yeah.
so many times people are like, sleep isn't self-care. It's just something I do, but it absolutely is self-care. It is. And it usually is the thing that takes a back seat and gets cut into, kind of burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
Because we always think, oh, well, I'll make it up later. I'm okay. I can go in 4 hours, and it's not true. It's, you need that time to process, allow your brain to process what just happened the day, allow you to refresh yourself and be present. And so, yeah, I love that as a self-care routine. It's absolutely
Oh,
important.
it so is. And like, I didn't even talk about the self-care aspects of like being around people. And that's so
Yeah.
good for us. And that I work out. But like when it comes down to like two things I just feel are very important to talk about are the gratitude and sleep. And yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, and even stress, stress is lessened when we're getting sufficient sleep. And working with clients in the fitness industry, they're always worried about like, why can't I lose weight? And so often it's like, well, let's check in with your stress and
Yeah.
your sleep. And so often that's the last thing people are thinking about for their health, when that's huge.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And especially the fitness industry and weight loss, I think a lot of times people think I got to push harder and harder and harder, but yet many times it's, you got to take a step back and allow your body to process and take a moment to do what it does best and let all the systems work its way out, rather than keep on pushing and feeling like you're never enough or you just got to do more and more. It is so important, that step back, even more important than taking more steps forward when you're forcing something.
It
Mhm.
absolutely is. And it's been really interesting to see. I think even over the last decade of being in fitness, I've seen a shift from that go, 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 like insanity, P90X, boot camp every day, CrossFit, like, and not saying any of those things are not good in of themselves, but there was so much of a like I would hear people going every single day to boot camp and things like that, and they're not seeing any progress. If anything, they're getting injured. And I do feel like, tell me if you've seen this too, like I've seen more of a shift of that awareness
Yes.
for people of like, look, there have to be days when walking is your exercise, or an easy yoga class, or sleeping in is the thing we need, or like, how's your hydration? Just all of this. It's so much more, like you said, than the go, 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 push, push, push.
Yeah, I would totally agree, because I noticed when, even like when we were growing up, our generation, and then into our 20s and even like early 30s, like it's very much was like, you got to do more and more and more. And it was all about the calories in, calories out, strict diets. And then it was like fad diets. I mean, there was so much messaging going on, and not that it doesn't exist today. It absolutely does. But I have seen a shift in it where it's not so like thrown in your face all the time, because that was like, I mean, I know I grew up with that constantly, and in my family environment, I saw that on the TV, I saw that. And I feel like there was even less resources then, because we didn't have the podcasts and people on social media exposing that for what it was. We just kind of took it as like, oh, this is what I need to do. So I completely agree with you that it is so important to recognize that the resting part is just as important as the go, go, go part. And it needs to be that happy balance between the two. For
And it's
sure.
hard, right? Because there's not a formula. It's not black and
Yeah.
white. There's not an A plus B equals C. And that gets really frustrating. I was just talking to a client yesterday about this, and I'm like, I know it can be so frustrating, but it's a work in progress. Like bodies are
Yeah.
complicated.
Mhm.
Bodies are so complicated.
Yeah.
And that's not even including all of the outside surrounding sources of energies and
Yes.
pollutants and just everything else. It's
Yes.
stressors. So it's like we said with have to shower every day. It's just you have to adapt as your life goes on too. And there's different chapters of your life and there's different pulls on your time. So it is a constant like figuring it out, but it doesn't have to be as complicated as sometimes we make it out to be, definitely as like the media can make it out to be of, you know,
Yes.
you have to do all of these things if you want to live a quote unquote healthy life. But it's
Yeah.
really like a lot of people that I see, it's we just need to carve out 10 minutes to go outside and take a walk each day. And if we can do that every day, then you're going to have huge gains in health. So it's finding what the simplest ways to start are too, and then kind of starting to add a little more, take out a little bit and see what really benefits you, because it's not going to be the same as your friend. It's not going to be the same as your
Yeah.
trainer or and so on and so forth.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That
Mhm.
individualized approach and knowing
Yeah.
yourself well enough to know what you should be
Mhm.
doing, and having a mentor or coach that
Mhm.
knows what they, where to push you and where to let you kind of take a rest break. So it is all about knowing yourself and having someone who can see an outside perspective in yourself. And that is a killer combination. And I love how you talk about start as simple as you need to. And I think,
Mhm.
and I know for sure that is the best approach. It absolutely is, because if you try to push yourself too hard too soon, you're going to resist it. And then you're going to fall off the bandwagon, and then you're going to come down to yourself because you couldn't maintain it again, or this is all what I always do. And it becomes this vicious cycle. So love that you talk about that simplicity for sure. So important. Going off of kind of like segueing into that, part of life is just like disappointments, setbacks, unexpected things that like derail you and hit you out of the blue. How do you approach that as far as what you've done in your life, especially in the performance arena? I'm sure there's plenty of things that happen unexpectedly, or setbacks, or parts you didn't get, or how do you handle that?
Absolutely. And I can kind of think two avenues to answer this. So I'll go one and then the
Yeah.
other. From the performing side of, I have a friend who's a lawyer who just can't comprehend the idea that I'm looking for jobs every single day, right? That I'm writing cover letters or auditioning, which is same as interviewing, right? Every day. When she was looking for a new job, I remember her just being like, oh my gosh, I've gone on 4 interviews and I don't know if I could do another one. How do you do this all the time? And it really just becomes like a part of your life. And it's to use the fitness like analogy, so to speak, it's a muscle that you get used to. I look at other people and what they do for their job, and I'm like, wow, how do you have the stamina, or how do you have like the mental willpower for this or that? And I guess my version of that is to show up, sing a song, and have someone say thank you and never hear from them again, or to send in a video of something I was really proud of doing for an episodic that TV show, and never hear from them again. And that is the more that once you accept that that's the nature of this business, that's really helpful. So I think accepting that that is what's going to happen, and then the yes becomes this really nice bonus when you get it, that's huge. It's again that mindset, right? It's how do you wake up each day? Is it, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose 4 jobs today? Or is it, I'm going to go and do my best performances 4 times. And whether or not I get the role, I've created a relationship with this casting director who now sees me as a talented performer. I say, if I do a good job, right? I'm hoping, right? The optimist. Or it's I am going to connect with these other auditioners, a couple friends that I've known for over the years. I'm going to see them. I'm going to have a nice social connection. Or I'm going to, after these 4 auditions, I'm going to go see a show and support a friend and have those great endorphins of being able to be there in that space. So there's so much that's out of our control in the performing world. So knowing what's in our control is showing up. What's in our control is doing our best job. Well, sometimes that's in our control, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're in the middle of an audition and the casting director's phone rings, and there's just there, but what we can do is go in, we're doing our best. And, you know, and it's those other things, it's cultivating the relationships, it's the things on the side. So again, it really goes back to like the mindset aspects of that, and really celebrating then when we do have the wins. And that doesn't necessarily mean booking the job. Like for a performer, a callback is huge. And we say that people in the outside world of that don't always get it, you know, to be in the last two people to be considered for a major role. That's a huge achievement, but you don't book it. So then it's not like it's going on your resume. It's not like the outside world gets to see what you've done, but you know that you got that far. And once you're there as a performer, once you're down to the final two, even the final like 10, if it started with 500 people, that's huge. That means the whole team likes you. And then it gets down to the nitty gritty of like, I mean, people lose out on roles because they're taller than the lead that's already cast. People lose out on roles because they look like the casting director's ex-wife. I mean, there's just so much out of your control that it's celebrating what you can and what you have achieved. So that's definitely one avenue there. And then the other aspect that came to mind when you're asking that question is the setbacks of fitness, because I know a lot of your audience too, with like the disordered eating history and all of that, and I'm right there with you, is that the setback of, oh my gosh, I have an injury or I have something that's preventing me. Like say that you are feeling great about your fitness, you're showing up to the gym, you're doing all of the push sometimes, pull back sometimes, and then you still face an injury. And I know I've been through 2 concussions that have just completely stopped me. And that first concussion, I was so scared about gaining weight, about not being able to work out, about getting behind as a performer. And then there's of course the financial aspect of my whole job is about being physical. So I'm losing out on money. But that big fear of like, oh my gosh, well, 3 weeks away or 4 weeks away, I'm going to lose all this weight, I'm going to lose all this muscle tone, and I'm going to do back. And honestly, I think my body appreciated going from, because at that point I was teaching maybe 14 or 15 classes a week in addition to being a performer. So it was crazy. And my body went, oh my gosh, thank you. You know, I feel like, and then when I did get back to it afterwards, I think my body was like, okay, I'm renewed, I'm ready to work again and work in a slightly modified fashion. So I feel like every chapter of our life with that too is different. Even the pandemic, like I was still working out before and during, but I stopped teaching boot camp and bar and all of this when the pandemic started, but I started going for some short runs and I did a lot more Pilates, and I realized, oh, my body really loves that. So even though it didn't feel like the intensity of a boot camp or something like that, my body was responding to it so much better. So, and this also kind of goes back to our other question about, starting to learn what works for your body. But those setbacks, it's just to say, it will be okay. Like even if people break their legs and are out of working out for a year or sometimes, or, you have a really hard pregnancy and you can't do things for so long, and you will get back, and maybe you'll get not just back, but you'll get to a better spot. And the body is smart and will work with you, so to speak.
Yes. Oh my God. There's so much listening to. Yeah. There are like so many things I want to like touch on that you just said, because I love it.
You got into all my passions here. So
yes, I love it. Yeah. There's so many themes that I'm like hearing, and I'm like, yes, that is exactly right. So the one thing I'm going to kind of start from the beginning, what you're saying, talking about rewarding the effort, not the outcome, because huge, like that it's so true. And like what you talk about, you have the control over your effort, but you don't have control over the outcome. So I love that. And you can take that, you're talking about performance, but that's a life lesson for everyone. You can take that in every aspect of your life. Like you can't always control what happens, but if you gave it all your effort, then you can sleep well at night, going back to sleep.
Exactly.
And so that I love. Talking about the expectations, like, the field. So you automatically have this expectation, like, this is just how it is. So it removes you from putting it on you, like you're not good enough, that this is just how everybody deals with it. This is how everyone is expected to, what the expectations of this field are, rather. So it's not necessarily there's something wrong with you if you don't book it. It's like, this is just how it is. So again, loving that too, that you're not putting it on yourself. Like there's something authentically wrong with me that I didn't book. It's just like, this is just the nature of the field. So
And I will say that's easier said than done sometimes, for
yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
that reminder is really important. And going back to the overnight success of a business person, there
mhm,
is none of that. Yeah. The person that suddenly showed up on Broadway, it's like you don't know about their whole background leading up to it. So yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And also what you're saying too, it is about putting in the seeds, planting the seeds, and you don't always harvest the next day or that day. It is about those connections that you're making. Maybe the whole point of that audition was not for you to book it, but for rather to meet the person that helps you with an audition 3 years from then, So
Exactly.
it is like we don't always know why we're there or why things work out the way they do, but we just have to have that faith that like this was happening for a reason and the world is working for me. So love that too. And what you're saying. And then again, you're talking about the fitness field and how those like injuries were almost like a blessing in disguise. They allowed you to rest and that your body was thankful for that. And I really, again, I think those things sometimes happen too, to remind us to pause and that we aren't always supposed to push forward. So the perspective that you had, that you could recognize that that really was a gift to yourself and not just something that was like going to derail you and send you through a tailspin. So many amazing perspectives to take from what you just shared and what your experiences are with setbacks, that anyone listening could take that. And if you've had a setback or you've had something in your life, these are golden nuggets that you can take and allow yourself to have a better mindset so that you can push forward, even if you've been set back by something that maybe was out of your control. So thank you for sharing all that. Love
Oh,
that.
thank you. Thank you. And again, it
Yeah.
might not feel good in the moment, but looking back, you're like, no, these
Mhm.
are, yep.
Yeah, love that. Kind of continuing on, what would you say to your younger self? Because we learn all these lessons throughout life that have, that serve us and allow us to grow, but our younger self didn't necessarily have all these available. So what are some things that you would tell your younger self to allow you to have an easier upbringing or perspective earlier on? And what are some of the biggest things you've learned by growing and evolving in life?
Okay. Um, well, first of all, I think I always get worried with a question like that because I don't want it to sound like I have regrets, because I totally am someone who's like the
Yeah.
journey, it's all stacks up for a reason. But I think what first comes to mind is the idea of just twofold. One is not worrying so much that, you have to get all the high scores on the tests, and that if you don't take the best classes, that's going to reflect badly on you, because that, we haven't gathered yet, that was very much my mentality of like having to be in the honors classes, because if I'm not in that one, it looks like I'm not as quote unquote again good, or something like that, where looking back I'm like, wow, it really did not matter, it really wouldn't have made a difference, and I probably would have had more time
Mhm.
to develop more, even closer bonds with certain friends, or get to do even more of an extracurricular. And I was super busy in high school and I loved that, but I think that it could have been a different balance, and I could have just stressed less on having such a every single detail having to be fully in it. And then of course that led to college, and so there's that aspect of just like focusing on what the end goal is, and not worrying so much about like, oh well, I have to achieve across the board, when my end goal is not to be everything to all people. It's
Mhm.
like, and of course we don't always know what that is from an early age, and that's a, that could be a whole other podcast right in of itself, but and that's confusing. But
Mhm.
just to really like taking the time to go back to, for me it's always been, I want to be a performer, I want to like connect with these audiences, so what's going to feed that? And that goes to kind of the second thing that was going on in my mind about what I tell my younger self would be just to really keep your focus on that.
Mhm.
And throughout my 20s, like financially, I had to make sure that I was making as much money as I could on the fitness side. So I can't say that like, oh, I could change that aspect. And I love it too. I love the motivation. I love interacting with people. but there's always a balance, right? And so because my focus was so strongly on that side, it meant the performing side was lessened. So now I'm like, ooh, I was sure I'd love to have had more focus on the performing so that I'd be in a different place there maybe, but look at all I've gotten to do with the fitness side of things. So there is always that little back and forth, but I would just say to really, focus as best we can as we learn more about ourselves too, because again, that's changing and figuring out where we want to be, of staying focused on those outcomes, and for me too, it's, not getting buried in the work constantly and constantly having to feel like I need to be completing a to-do list, but instead, spend more time at the gathering with people, because people are really what like fuels the soul, right? And that aspect, and then the taking more time to be in practice as a performer, taking more time to sing, to dance, instead of like trying to do the computer work of submitting to things and just going from audition to audition audition to check those boxes, as opposed to like training more. So I'm really rambling, I feel like, with that answer, but I guess that's where kind of my thoughts are going.
No, I love it. And I love how you say it's not a regret, because it's so true. You can't look back and regret anything, because everything was in your life for a reason. So it's so true. And so, but you do gain these perspectives of like,
Mhm.
I would have given myself more grace in that time. And like, those are all important things to remember, because when we have a limited perspective, when we're young, we can't see obviously into the future, but when we can look back, we can say, okay, that I would have been easier on myself, or not, I would have realized that didn't really matter, and that I could think beyond that, and that failure wasn't the end of things. It was just the beginning of something else. So that's why I love that, to say, like, for anyone listening who's younger, and this is resonating with you, and you feel like you're this big, a high achiever, or you're trying to make everything perfect. It won't matter so much, but what will matter is giving yourself grace in that moment. So that's what I love hearing, that perspective looking back, and also to realize that everything is in your life for a reason, to grow you in some path. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I love that. And especially for people who are younger right now listening to this, these are important lessons, and it's probably something that maybe we would have loved to have heard when we were younger, so.
Podcasts didn't exist back then.
It didn't. I know. Absolutely. I would have loved to listen, but it would have helped me so much, tremendously. So yeah. So if someone's younger and you're listening to this, these are great reminders to give yourself grace and have perspective, even though it's hard to do that when you haven't lived, many years
Right.
to gain it. So thank you. And so kind of wrapping up here, for anyone who wanted to work with you and connect with you, how can they find you?
Sure. Thanks for asking.
Mhm.
My main website is my name, KateChrerichello.com, and you could click on the fitness information off of that, or you could check out Be by Kate, BEBYKATE.com. And those all have links to Instagram and Facebook as well. But those would be the two main websites.
Great. And I'll make sure those are in the show notes. So for anyone listening, that way it's easy to connect with Kate and reach out to her, but to reach out to you. But thank you so much for all your insight, perspectives. Just love talking with you. So I'm so glad we could connect again.
Kelly, well, thank you. I really appreciate you asking me to be honest. And seriously, if I had this podcast when I was in college, you'd have saved me a lot of stress and worries for sure. So thanks for what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. And I agree. I just wish that, there were more resources for just having a better worldly perspective. So grateful for what you do as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
And again, for everyone listening, please subscribe to the channel and please leave a review. Would love to hear from you. And thank you again for spending your precious time with me. Thank you for spending your precious time to listen to this episode of Rewiring Health. My mission is to inspire hope and healing through science-backed practices. If you found value in this, please share with 3 people and leave a review. By doing so, this message can be spread to those who need to hear it most. Also, to get updates on the most recent episodes, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being part of this community, and I am forever grateful for you.